So welcome all. Glad you can make it this evening. I'm Angela, for those of you who don't know me, the co-founder of WPF, along with Regina. And we had recently brought up a conversation in the Facebook group about recession planning and, concern about where the market is and where just like life is right now. And it was just such a good, conversation and a hot topic. We felt that doing a specific Zoom to talk about this made a lot of sense. And we're going to have Michelle Jackson from Michelle is Money Hungry joining us in just a couple of minutes. Regina, if you want to introduce yourself too.
Yes, well, Angela already gave me a bit of an introduction. I'm Regina. I am the other half of Women's Personal Finance, sometimes behind the scenes a little bit more. I also live in the Pacific Northwest. I'm on the Oregon coast. Definitely recession issues are a top of mind thing for people in rural areas who can't readily move and find jobs. Luckily, I am coast by and pecking away at a lot of different things, but I'm still feeling the brunt of cost increases and all those things going up. So employment isn't a particular concern, but how to manage all of the increase in my budget definitely is something that I think about. So me and Angela have these conversations a lot, and we are excited to hopefully get some good ideas flowing and facilitate helping everybody be a little more mindful and maybe decreasing a little bit of the stress that you might have about looming potential recession.
And I have to say it's really interesting because I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago for my day job, and it was with a bunch of business folks, and it seemed like people just didn't want to use the recession word. I don't know if you're noticing that in your day-to-day life. WPF, it seems like we really are talking about it like this is, where the world is at right now. But for a lot of big business, I'm still seeing that there is a lot of conversation about how we might go into a recession, or we might be, heading that way, when I think most of us are, feeling the day-to-day of inflation and watching layoffs and, watching all the signs that feel very recession-y. And so I'd have to say that it sometimes feels a little weird when you bring it up and then everyone's like, well, maybe someday, when it very much feels like that's kind of where we're at right now. I also graduated college in 2009. So I don't know who here is in that boat of, graduating into the Great Recession meant that it was really, really hard to find a job and just really hard to, do the money stuff because there just wasn't any money. And I think that might make me a little bit more sensitive to it going in again. Talking to other 09, 10 grads, they seem to be feeling similar that unlike the last recession, though, I definitely feel like I'm in a much better position this time around. And I think there are a lot more opportunities, honestly, than 2009. The online space, as far as online and gig work and that kind of thing, really didn't exist in a big way in 09. So in that way, it does feel a bit different. I ended up working as an intern as a naturalist, but then also got a job on the weekends working for PetSmart to pay off my student loans and be able to pay my day-to-day cost. And I think today I wouldn't have gone the PetSmart retail route. I think there are a lot more opportunities that would have been more flexible and probably would have paid more as well. So while it feels like things are really heavy and scary, I think in some ways there are more opportunities now than there were, almost 15 years ago.
We definitely have some trends with the questions that people were putting out in the chat. A lot of people are concerned about how to beef up their savings and their emergency funds, which is something good to be paying attention to when money might be a little less stable. And then there's also a few people who have questions, not just about building the emergency funds, but concerns about what to do or how to think about that if they might deplete them quicker than usual with some of the extra pressures that recession layoffs and things like that can put on your emergency funds. There's also a number of people just looking at how they should continue to invest and build for retirement in that period, which is always something we want to focus on, but you might want to address your strategy. I'm giving a little overview here so we can be mindful and then hop right in when Michelle gets here. And then there's some more practical concerns, things like worrying about losing clients and other things. If you're self-employed, definitely people can cut back on things they're spending on in a recession. So if you're self-employed, that is something to be concerned about.
How do you feel like you are preparing specifically yourself right now?
Me?
Yeah.
I am trying to earn a little bit more where I can, being mindful of not overlooking things that I would have maybe decided might not be fully worth my time before. And they would have been worth my time. It just, I don't know, wasn't as stressful. Like in the last couple of weeks, I've signed up for a couple of like new bank account bonuses. My money's sitting there already. I tend to carry a pretty large emergency fund. And if the money's sitting there and I have the opportunity to make a little bit more off of it, plus the increase in interest rates, like I'm going to do that now, where when the stock market was going up, you know, $5,000 a day on my accounts, it didn't seem as important to pay attention to. I'm not seeing those kind of gains regularly, so those small things that maybe don't take a lot of effort are something I'm paying better attention
Do you
to.
want to maybe drop the link in the chat about, I think is that a Chase bank account bonus?
There was two that I did. One was Chase and one was Capital One 360. I will look for those. And you can talk.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling that same sort of thing of, you know, I definitely lulled myself into a place of buying a lot more coffee out and lunches and whatnot. We had a pretty cushy difference between our expenses and our income, and I feel like that has really, really shrunk over the last year. And so it feels like every single item I'm more mindful with. And like Regina is saying, the small items that used to feel like maybe not worth my time or just overwhelmed with other things feel like they're more important again. I don't know, maybe that feels very tone deaf. I hope not. I know that we are all in different financial places, but I think
I can only be
that,
honest,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
where you're at and what we're doing. So I mean, that's where we're at. Talk about what we're doing.
Yeah.
I did drop those two links to the two bank accounts that I signed up for. If anybody's interested in checking those out, those are not WPF affiliate links. We are not big enough to get the bank things yet, but whoever you sign up for those with probably get some sort of incentive.
Yeah, and then one of the conversations that I saw again in the Facebook chat quite a bit, and something that we're doing is really focusing on our food costs, because it's one of the places where I feel like we're not saving money, but I think by being more mindful, we're doing a good job of holding the cost a little bit closer to what it was a year ago or 2 years ago. So lots of fancy ramen, which is basically getting a ramen packet from the grocery store and then adding, we have chicken, so backyard chicken eggs and greens and stuff out of the garden and fancying them up. And, you know, it's a super easy, quick weeknight meal instead of going and, you know, ordering teriyaki or something. It seems really basic, and it is, but I think that's one of those places that we still have a little bit more control over things versus, you know, gas prices. If you have to drive to work, might be a little bit harder to get around, but I think food is still something that we can have a bit of flexibility on. So, hey, Michelle.
Is here. Oh, there you are. I was looking for your picture.
I'm right by you on my screen. I just got off the light rail, which is why I still have my outdoor clothes, but whatever.
Yeah, that's all right.
You know, normally I change when I get in the house, but there's not enough time. So there you go.
Hey, we're keeping it real around here. So welcome, everyone. Just want to say hello to Michelle Jackson of Michelle's Money Hungry. We invited her on to come chat with WPF about recession planning. She's in the Facebook group as well and dropped a real good comment in the recession planning thread. And I was like, hey, clearly this is a conversation that we need to talk about more fully. And so invited Michelle on to join us. And she also has a wonderful podcast talking about personal finance and current event related content. So if you have not checked her out yet, you absolutely should. And we will drop a link to that in the chat. And if Michelle, you want to just introduce yourself a little bit.
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Jackson. I am in the personal finance space. And the reason why I even got interested in being in the personal finance space was because my money was a mess, but it was partly like I didn't know any financial skills. I wasn't earning enough money. And there was a period of time where I was also supporting my mom for about 3 years financially. It was a very lonely experience when that happened, but I found out that actually statistically, women of color in particular are very, and I mean, Black, brown, what have you, but are very likely to be a financial caregiver, probably much younger than they would expect. And the percentage is it's like 51%. So after that situation settled itself, everything's good, by the way, now in terms of that. But after that settled, it took a very long time for my finances to get together. And I had debt. It just was a financial tsunami, really. And so I had student loans. I still have student loans, to be candid. I had just a lot of unsecured debt. So I had about $60,000, a little over, in unsecured debt and lots of random shit. Sorry, I cuss a little bit.
Hey, have you met WPF? I think you're fine.
And so I ended up paying. Part of what I'll share tonight is influenced by that experience of paying off all that unsecured debt. I think a lot of times in personal finance, you'll hear people talk about, oh, hey, I paid off like $60,000, which is great. And then you're like, well, what did you have to pay off? And they're like, well, I had 2 bills. I had my car and I had like a credit card. That wasn't the case for me. I had like tons of lots of little things. And that debt complexity was so freaking stressful. It really drives me crazy that we don't have that conversation enough, more often as personal finance content creators. So I was dealing with a really complicated financial situation with like 30 different creditors easily, and having to like work through that. Now imagine being in arrears with that many people and getting text messages, letters, emails, SMS messages. Like imagine how stressful that was. So that was fun, not. So I was like, I need to figure this out. And it's probably the thing I've discovered is money is a lifelong, it's like learning a language. You're going to learn it forever because there's like all these nuances and things. So if you're here and you're like, I'm not getting my money together, it's not coming together, like give yourself some grace. It's a lifelong experience of learning. And so this next year, I'm publishing a book called Not a Financial Unicorn. And the idea around that is I'm tired of those financial unicorn tropes, in the personal finance space where someone's like, well, I had $100,000 and I paid it off in 3 months, or these like really spectacular, amazing stories that are awesome. But all of these other financial stories that are just as powerful and probably a lot more common just don't get talked about, like my story of taking years to pay off $60,000. But when I tell you that my quality of life has so improved by doing that. But it wasn't sexy. So you won't necessarily hear about it unless I share it with you guys or on my blog and podcast. So a lot of what we'll talk about in terms of recession planning is influenced by that period of time in my life. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, it's so easy. I mean, I think that's true of like all online content, be it money or, unrelated stuff. It's the shiny, glittery, once in a lifetime situations that we like to hear about. Or is it that we like to hear about it, or those are the ones that get shared?
Those are the ones that get shared.
Yeah.
I have an online brand just like you do. And honestly, like they get clicks, they get excited, people get excited about it. And so my brand has grown slower because I cover things that people don't cover. So if you're interested in a person who's like, why do we have $2,000 a month rent? And why are we normalizing this? I own a property and I'm asking this question. That's the kind of content that I create. If you want to know about the personal finances of sex workers, that's the kind of stuff. Like I try to ask questions that just don't get covered. It's very important to me. And I feel like what we do, the three of us, is low-key subversive because we're kind of going against the grain. But that means that like our businesses may grow a little slower, but I think that they're just as impactful and important. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's come for the money stuff and then stay for the deeper, harder conversations that aren't so sexy as $100,000 paid off in 6 months.
Well, even this conversation too, right? Like a lot of people are trying to pretend that we might not be in a recession or very close to being in a recession, and they don't want to have the conversations, and we recognize that. And some people want to say that's fear mongering or those types of things, but I think it's realistic, and talking about all that and getting it out in the open is much, much better.
And I think that's, go ahead, Michelle.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the three of us are also kind of overlapping in the prepper-fi space too. So, we talk very much about preparedness. And so I think recession talk isn't as much fear-mongering to us because we are constantly in a state of preparing for things to go sideways.
Well, I'm going to say I'm not prepper-fi, but I'm
Okay.
going to put an asterisk on this. I'm from Colorado. So the way that I think about prep is, I think, different than prepper-fi. It snows here, right? So we prep for cold weather and for those times when you can't leave your house. And so how I think about prep is very influenced by like seasonal changes, right? So
Now you have fires too.
Huh?
Oh yeah, fires.
Yeah. So what I do is I start prepping for winter. Like I grew up this way in August. This year I started a little later because I went on a 32-mile backpacking trip, but that's another conversation. Anyway, and so I have the philosophy, the comment that I made in the group, I'm going to share what the comment was that it's very Colorado to do those kind of things, by the way, that 32-mile backpacking trip. That's not unusual.
Hey, we're Northwest folks too.
Yeah.
Maybe Regina doesn't do that kind of thing.
No. Someone looked shocked. And I'm like, that's very West Coast. But I made the comment. I was like, look, the older you get, like you're just like recessions are a part of an economic cycle. And in my view, I really get frustrated because in the conversation, like the way that I view personal finance is you're always preparing for both the best and the worst, right? So you're always in preparation mode. And I feel like when people talk about recessions, and in the chatter that I've heard this year, quite frankly, that I've found a little off-putting is I do feel like people are freaking out instead of being like, instead of just being rational, like recessions come. How they will show themselves to be, each one is different. I'm Gen X, so I should also put this out there. I'm older than the two ladies here. So I'm Gen X. I've been through more than one recession. And the thing that I learned is you get through it, right? It might suck, but there are a lot of opportunities. People still spend money in recessions. Things still happen. There's still the arts, like everything still happens, but you're going to have to make adjustments. And I think that having like a calmer conversation about genetics, a calmer conversation around recessions and being like, let's have this conversation. They're part of an economic cycle. They naturally will definitely happen. And to talk like they will never happen again, for me, has been bizarre to observe, right? Like it's been so weird. Like, oh my God, there's gonna be a recession. I'm like, they always fucking come. Like I've been through like 5 easily.
So,
And there's a nuance, which is states, there are state recessions where it's just your state. It could be a national recession. When we have a recession, how the impact is can depend on the industries in your state, where you work. Like it's so nuanced that you can only focus on the things that you can control, which is why we're having this conversation.
so things you can control in recession planning, it seems like first step is just like wrapping your head around that they come and you should expect them, and
they don't last forever.
But like it's I don't know that you can even say it's a bad thing. It's just a cyclical thing that's going to happen. You can be better or worse positioned for how you handle the recession, but just kind of accepting that they're a part of our economic reality and coming to terms with that is number one.
And I think also the reminder that they don't last forever.
Yeah.
Like it can feel like they're going to last forever, but you know, things will change. We will get through this. Things will look different on the other side. What will it look like? Who knows? I mean, climate change is a big long-term factor that's probably going to change the way a lot of things happen over the next coming decades, but we're not going to be in this moment forever.
And I'm gonna be honest, like here in where I live, I don't necessarily see some of the, like, again, each state has different economic indicators. And I've looked at the indicators for Colorado and they're like, you're not really going to have a recession. Like it's going to be a flat experience. We're not really good. I don't think we're really going to notice it. So, I think part of it is really understanding what you can control, understanding like what happens within the field of work that you do. The last one that we were in, I was in education. What do people do during recession? A lot of times they go back to school. So I was at a university. I was working with international students, interestingly enough, and that business was booming at that time because people go back to school. So it's like, since we're having this conversation now, it means starting today, if you haven't started prepping, and this is like forever, like you're always going to be preparing for downtimes. That's just part of managing your money. It doesn't mean you get it right, by the way, because I've like made how many mistakes? I just told you I had 60,000 plus in unsecured debt. I've done every mistake. So I'm very like judgment free about like, I see a lot of times comments in the threads and stuff, and people are so down on themselves, and I get so frustrated, right? I'm like, we're doing the best we can with the knowledge that we have and the tools that we have. And if we can try to do a little bit better each day, we're great. And that's all you can do. Like there's enough stuff out there to make us feel like shit. Don't add to it with whatever's in your head. Like I wish that I didn't, like sometimes I wish that I never had all these horrible experiences, but then I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be able to share with people. Like I'm a very different person than say if I'd never had those experiences. It is what it is my point.
I'm also going to do our interjection here because I don't think any of us said it, where depending on what we say throughout this conversation, none of us are like financial professionals giving you professional advice. These are conversations for entertainment, just us speaking about our lives, and apply those as you wish.
Okay, so we got the question, how do we prepare? So I think that each one of us can kind of like talk about what we do. I think there's philosophy and then there's logistics and action. So you guys can go. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had started to say a little bit. I mean, I'll expound because I had mentioned I already carry a pretty large emergency fund. more so than a lot of people I talk to. That comes in part from some traumatic things that have happened for me over the last few years. There was a job loss. Within a few months of that, my son was diagnosed with cancer. So a lot of those like
He
uncertainties.
is doing well right now, by the
Yes,
way, for those of
doing-
you who don't
doing
follow
well.
him. Yes.
But a lot of those like uncertainties that kind of are the things that might be, you know, weighing heavily on people going into more uncertain economic situations. That was kind of my reality for a number of years because I didn't have backups and didn't know what was going on. So I upped my emergency fund considerably so that I could, versus having it all invested, so that I knew I had a reliable amount of money that I could get to. What size your emergency fund needs to be is dependent on a lot of factors. That's probably a little too complex to get into here. You know, if you have Roth IRAs, you may not need as much. If you've got multiple income sources in the house, you may not need as much. You know, like if your home is paid off, if your mortgage is higher, you know, but evaluate that. I think you should have a comfortable emergency fund minimally for 3 months of expenses, but we usually recommend more like 6. So to me, that's a starting spot to focus if you are not there yet, just to give you a buffer for whatever might happen.
And I think there was a point where you and I had been talking about you were possibly going to invest more of that emergency fund. And at this point, you've decided to keep it in cash. Again, you dropped some links about bank bonuses so you can get a little bit more. I bonds are still, you know, they're a lower interest rate, but they're still higher than, you know, a high yield savings account. High yield savings account is still going to be better than your brick and mortar. But you've made an intentional choice to have a lower return to have that solvency if you need it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna interject, by the way.
Okay.
So I think you guys are thinking one way, and I feel like the group and I are thinking another way about
All
how
right.
to have this conversation. So I'm going to talk about my philosophical beliefs around preparing for recessions, or just like lowering your expenses so that you can have freed up cash. So I am the friend who, if we go to a store, I have the unfortunate magical power to always like the most expensive thing. Okay. And whenever I hear personal finance content around like preparing for recession and all this stuff, we talk about freeing up cash. It makes sense, right? You need a buffer. You need to put money into a savings account, as Regina is, mentioning, things like that. But the problem is we never talk about the fact that a lot of us don't want to lower the quality of life that we have in order to facilitate that. So a big part of me paying off all that debt, I had to free up a lot of cash. And actually a big part of that time when I was paying off that debt, I was self-employed. And so one of the things I would say is acknowledge what you love in your life and figure out how you can get the same thing, the same quality at a lesser price. So I'm going to give you some examples, because I think a lot of times people hear that we're going to sacrifice everything in order to prepare for a recession. So it just sounds like shit. It sounds like hell. It sounds like really a painful thing. It just sucks. And so this is what I do. So and I'm going to just give some examples. So I don't eat bad food. I just don't. I believe food is medicine. I grew up in Boulder, which is a hippie town. So this is part of why. So I regularly shop at places like Whole Foods, Sprouts, things like that. They're near my house. I can walk to them. But I'm not paying Whole Food prices. I use an app called Ibotta. It's a Colorado-based company. I've met the CEO. It's a savings app, but I primarily use it for groceries. One of the things I would say about Ibotta, which is really interesting, in my view, the algorithm gets better the longer you use the app, because it identifies more what you're shopping for, because you have to upload your receipts in order to get your savings. So I've actually earned back $600 using Ibotta. I'm single. That's a significant amount of money. Okay. So I'm eating the same quality food. I use Ibotta. I shop multiple grocery stores. So I kind of have a feel for which grocery stores do what. By this, what I mean is my local Sprouts is really, really good for produce, right? So when I mean good, I mean super cheap, but really good quality. I buy meat from Sprouts as well on sale. Good quality, grass-fed beef, stuff like that. I've been a vegan too and a vegetarian, so which is why I like produce so much. But this is what I do. Like, I know which stores do what. I could go to Trader Joe's all the time. I have one in my neighborhood, but that's snacking food. That's not food. So I do that as a treat. It's like just kind of making these adjustments. For groceries, I go once a week. Don't shop as a habit. You'll spend a lot more money. So just go once a week, literally once a week. If you have kiddos and you have a partner who can keep them when you shop, leave the kids with the partner, because you'll get distracted, you'll spend more, and that's just, it is what it is. I have a lot of friends with littles, they're adorable, and honestly, they cost extra because they want everything. I remember being that age. If your farmers markets are still open, which they're probably closing down right now.
We have some year-round ones around here. So
you do not, because it snowed today. But so like for farmers markets, I live near a really nice one, but do you know what I do? There's a booth that has $15 stuff a bag. Like, just, there's an art to stuffing the bag. But if you get there at 12 o'clock, because the farmers market closes at 1, it's buy 2 for 1. So it's like knowing those kinds of things in order to really expand your dollar. Travel is another example.
I want to focus on the food a little bit though.
Okay.
I want to expand on that. My farmer's market too, my kiddo made friends with one of the farmers, and again, showing up about an hour before close, we will go there and they will load us up with like the stuff that's at the very end of its life, and we go home and feed our chickens that way. Or we've bought, 20-pound bulk stuff for canning that she'll give a special discount because my kid is cute and they've become friends. But also meat, we buy bulk. So we will do like a quarter cow or a half a pig at once. And what I have found is, like, as food prices have done this, the bulk meat has not. I think it will at some point, but so far, bulk meat has stayed reasonably priced, which means that we pay for our, local grass-fed meat for the same or less price than the grocery store.
I think you point out something very subtle that we never, I feel like it doesn't get enough conversation around. Sorry guys, I've been up really long time today, so I'm tired. Relationships and connections with people who can tell you about things like savings, like special deals, things like that. So when you're at your grocery store, talk to the people. Ask, how many free coffees I get when I'm at the coffee shop? You know why? Because I know all my baristas. If you see my Twitter feed, I'm like, yeah, my baristas just gave me a free coffee. I never asked them for this, by the way. But it's like just building relationships with the people in the spaces that you're normally going to spend for food. In restaurants, the nicer you are, the better your deals, and you get all the inside scoop on stuff. Even with shopping, same thing. Like, I get the inside scoop all the time because I have like regular people that I speak with and work with.
Yeah. I think community building is a really big, important thing. I mean, I think that's kind of clear. WPF is all about community building, but we do a lot of that in our personal lives too. I know Regina does a lot of that. She gets like old malt from the brewery to feed her chickens, and I think that's where, in recessions especially, having that community and people to lean on who do other things better than you. Like, there are things that you do better, and then there are things that other people in your community are going to do better.
And there's a ton of waste that goes on with that. Like you were saying, Michelle, even in a recession, there's tons of waste going on at higher levels with businesses and things like that. Having those connections, having people know you're somebody who's resourceful and likes to make use of things, you may very well get opportunities to help reduce that waste, and that can save you a lot of money.
We have a community member who brought up Fetch as well, as a good money saving app. And yes, you have to scan the receipts, but you just have to kind of that's like literally the only friction I think with these apps, is that you have to remember to scan the receipt. Usually I'll do it in store. I'll just find a flat space and get it done. That way I don't have to remember it later. I'm looking
I
through.
feel like there are a lot of Gen Xers in this chat, so
What?
you're collecting them, Michelle.
I'm looking through the comments, by the way.
Yeah, I
Michelle,
know
a
that.
lot of the other questions related to thinking about and how to continue saving for retirement and balancing that in recession planning.
I feel like you guys are better suited for that. For two reasons. One, I run my own business, and where my head is at with all that, I think is a little like different. I think that you guys are just better suited to answer that question, or to reflect on that question. Clearly it's a priority. But I'm a little skittish on that specific topic in terms of what I would say to people.
All right, well, then I guess I will tackle it. I still plan on maxing out my IRA this year. It's going to be harder, and going up to 6,500 in 2023 is going to be harder still. I don't know who's got a lot of noise in the background, but I think as long as you can manage it, it is really, really important to put those dollars away, especially during a recession, especially as the stock market goes kind of wonky. Because if you had invested through the last recession, your money is worth so much more today, even with the up and downs now. So it can be really, really tempting to put that stuff on hold. And if you have to, like, no guilt, no stress, like, you have to make sure that you're covering your basics. But if you can continue to invest now and, you know, not look at your accounts, not think about what you're doing, like, now is where wealth is made as far as the stock market. So it's hard to do. It feels really hard to do when you're really worried about every dollar, but every dollar you can invest for your retirement now is going to be worth so much more because you're investing right now.
This is also potentially where thinking a little bit more about the investment strategy, as far as maybe using Roths if you're using IRAs, because you have more access to the money that you put in. So Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, if one's available through your work, gives you a little bit more flexibility. And this is also where thinking about those alternative retirement vehicles like HSA accounts, if you have access to those, can be good too, because that's something else that you can get to easier. And medical expenses are one of the main things that do make people tap into emergency funds. So you can still potentially be funding and focusing on retirement, but building it in ways that you have better access to it if that's a concern.
Yeah, so we're not going to dive into that today, but I think HSA and Roth, you know, if you want to look into those, basically they're your retirement account, but if you absolutely need to, you can tap into them before you're 59 and a half. So they're kind of like a, you know, plan F emergency fund if you absolutely need to, but without like withholding investing right now. So go ahead, Michelle, you cut out for a second, but I think you're back now.
Yeah, I saw my internet went unstable for some. Maisha asked a question. She said she'd like to hear my philosophy. So actually, I'm thinking about this
as a business owner.
Yeah, but this covers everyone. My philosophy: earn more. Period. Like, I know we talk about adjusting your expenses and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, we have to earn more. And that could be side hustles, that could be overtime, that could be you know, very thoughtfully changing to another role, even though that's a little tricky if depending on your field and what happens to your field during a recession. For me as a business owner, I have to earn more. That is like literally my number one goal for like literally starting now, because I'm already planning 2023. I'm deep into that, is to earn significantly more. And quite frankly, as women in this space, in this group that we're having this conversation, that is our number. We have to earn more. What that looks like for you depends. Like, if you do side hustles, my theory is you should do one that is super easy to do and doesn't like stress you the fuck out. So like, there are apps such as my favorite app, which is not everywhere, so I just want to put it say that, is Loopy. Loopy is a washing app where you wash other people's clothes. So you literally just have to have a washing machine and dryer. You do a test run of washing a load of clothes.
This is the first time I've ever heard about this.
I'm obsessed with it. It's in Colorado. I have a link, but I don't have it with me now. But so things like Loopy, I love, because if you're a stay-at-home mom, you can't be running around with your kids, but you can wash clothes because you already have a washing machine and dryer, hopefully. And so you could do Loopy, or you could, if you love dogs, I'm allergic. I like dogs, but I'm allergic to them. But use WAG and walk the dog and get a little exercise. And, they're just ways to make money that are enjoyable without being super stressful. I always feel like people are like, do Uber. I'm like, driving is stressful. I don't want to do Uber. Gas is expensive. So I'm always looking at ways to make money that optimize my time without stressing me the fuck out. But so again, it really depends on what's going on with you personally. If you're at home, you got a lot of things going on, you're busy, you're CEO of your house. So how can you optimize your time with tasks that don't distract you to the point where you're like, why am I doing this? If you're in a 9 to 5, maybe there's opportunities just within your freaking job and you just optimize those. If you are an entrepreneur like myself, that means you're like on it. Right. But at the end of the day, in my view, you have to earn more money, regardless of whether there's recession, there's not. And if you're trying to meet these goals, you need to have the money to do that. And so literally starting today, just start thinking about, what does that look like for you?
I'd love if some folks would put in the comments, like, what does that look like for you? Does that mean picking up an extra shift and getting overtime? Does it look like Loopy? Does it look like WAG or Rover? Does it look like downloading Ibotta and getting cash back on your groceries? I would love to, secret shopping. I feel like that is kind of an underrated one that some people really enjoy, and you can get free restaurant meals out of it too. So but I would love for everybody listening to think of just a few, 1 or 2 ideas that, can come up with, $100 to $500 a month. We just did a WCF survey, and of our community who have a business or a side hustle, the majority of the people who have them make under $1,000 a month. So when you think about all these extra ideas for income, don't feel like it has to be $3,000 a month or it doesn't count. An extra $100, $200 a month. When you're putting it into savings or into retirement, or if it's just keeping you at the same level you've been with inflation, don't discount the smaller side hustles.
And I'm going to be honest, when I started making $500 consistently, like when I was paying off my debt and everything was hell, and I was paying $500 a month, or I was earning $500 a month consistently, that when it hit $500, that was huge. It actually made such a big difference. So I think people would be surprised how a smaller amount a consistent smaller amount might actually really be the thing that turns the needle in terms of the trajectory of whatever plan that you have for yourself. So
yeah, $500 a month funds your IRA for the year.
Exactly. And the thing with Ibotta is, please note, it takes time to hit $600 in cash back. Okay. So this would be I don't want you to be like, Michelle said Ibotta and I just got $10 in January. It's an ongoing thing. So I want to be clear about that. And Maisha was confused about that. Maisha, you got it? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So you want to talk about travel now?
I want to talk about travel and fun. And I think it's an important part of this conversation because, again, this goes back to the whole, when we talk about recessions and we're planning for these things, it's very much through, in my view, how the conversation happens often is very negative and very scary. And it's just a very fearful lens. And I think that by kind of, again, just being like, recessions happen. We always should be preparing. We're planting seeds for the time for it to, the seeds to grow later. We have to also have fun and joy and happiness. And we've just gone through 4 years almost of COVID. And this is literally, to me, such a non-negotiable. in terms of fostering joy in your life, but fun can cost money. So I'm going to give examples of how, as I was paying off that debt, how I made sure that, again, the key thing was quality had to stay at a certain level because I have expensive taste, but I could not spend the same amount, right? So I'm going to give some examples so that you can kind of think of ideas. So just, these aren't to tell you to do the same thing, but to just get your thoughts flowing. Always look at Facebook events and Eventbrite, especially if you're in a city with like 50,000 or more people. Those bigger metro areas will have lots of things happening, even during a recession. So I got a $5 goat yoga class that I took this summer. It was so much fun, but those goats are heavy. Okay. I had been wanting to go to a goat yoga class forever, but I didn't want to pay $30 because I was like, I like goats, but I don't know about that. So I found a $5 goat yoga class. I've gone to, I don't know how many alcohol like tasting classes for free. There's an event called Taste of Iceland that comes through Denver every summer, and it's all free. It's all free drinks. It's free like concerts. It's free, like free, all these things. So really like start looking at those spaces, Facebook events and Eventbrite on a regular basis to see what's going on out there. Look at meetup.com, actually is a big one. Meetup.com is amazing. And part of what I love about meetup.com is it's all groups. It's a lot of groups of people doing things. What happens when you have a group and it's a ticketed event? You get a discount on the tickets, right? So I used to work at a university. I would take students to basketball, football, whatever. When you buy group tickets, you get a group rate, you get a savings, and you get to meet people. That's the other thing too. So you get to meet new people, you get savings. I'm in a group actually for called Outdoor Afro. It is to encourage African Americans to go out in the outdoors. We get a lot of our events sponsored. I had a sponsored ski trip to Crested Butte, Colorado in 2021. Because of that. So maybe there is a special interest group that you want to be involved in, and they get stuff sponsored because that person, the leader, is like on it. I was in a blogging group here in Denver for years, and my friend who ran this group always got every single meeting sponsored. So the sponsorship was a restaurant meal. So we would go to a restaurant, we would eat the meal, and we would review the restaurant and have this amazing experience, and then just share the restaurant. So there's a crazy amount of ways to find free fun. There's if you want to work out, there's the November Project. The November Project is a free fitness collective. I hate to call it a collective, but that's the best way to frame it. And they have chapters all throughout the US. And if you're like, I want to work out and get my, my COVID 20 pounds to go away, that might be me projecting. It's free workouts here in Denver. They meet twice a week and it's free workouts. I'm just not a morning person, so that's usually why I don't go, but they're amazing workouts because the city is the fitness studio. There's free days at your museum. There's just so many things that are typically happening out there, but you have to actively have a process to find them so that when you're freeing up your cash, you're not like, everything sucks, I can't do anything, life sucks. Like I always hear that. They're like, I've cut all my expenses and now I haven't been able to do anything. Can you imagine what it was like paying off $60,000, having all these people contacting me, and if I just stayed at home? That would have sucked. I was depressed already, and it would have made it worse, right?
Yeah.
So
I do want to say also with like the museums and stuff, somebody also mentioned libraries. I know our library has like free passes to the museum, free passes to the zoo, free passes to the aquarium. Like,
National parks.
Yeah, it's amazing though. Like, just check out your library. At least ours has like a free events, or like you can search your library or go in and ask the librarian. They often have so many like programs, and then you get the same exact thing, only you don't have to pay for it.
Mhm. And you do in the sense that your taxes pay for your libraries, but your taxes pay for your libraries. Go. The library is the best place ever. Thank you, Angela, for bringing that up. I love library. The other thing is travel. So here's the other thing. So I'm not the best person to be like, use credit cards, because that was part of my problem with debt. So I'm not anti-credit cards, but not every financial tool is for everyone, right? But if you are really able to manage your credit cards and you're able to manage your mileage points and things like that, that could be a way, obviously, to get free flights. There are 2 tools I want to share with you. I am an affiliate. I'm not sharing my affiliate link. I'm just sharing that the relationship. One is called Cash Freely, which is, and these are, I know the founder, he's in Colorado. Cash Freely helps people. It's a free app, and it helps people to manage their cash back rewards, so that if you already have like a Sapphire card or whatever, and you've got cash back rewards, you can like understand how the program works and just all that kind of thing. And he also has Travel Freely, which helps you manage your mileage points. So those are free apps. His name is Zach. They're amazing. It's an amazing resource, and it's a good way to keep things organized. If you're a fire person in particular who's really doing like the credit card hacks, I'm not that person, but I know that this tool works really well. In terms of travel though, and I'm going to share some links after I say my comments. Again, quality has to be here. Cost has to be here now. So what I do is I stay at mid-tier boutique hotel hostels. They're like a hybrid that's become really popular, I think, out west. I see it a lot out west. And they have either like, you can do shared rooms, which if you're not into that, fine, because you can also opt for your own room. Okay. What I tend to do is if I go on a trip, I might be in a shared room, like they're bunks, but they're really cute. I'll be in a shared room for a couple days, and then I'll move into my own room for a couple days. So it really like extends my spend. If you're single, it's a really fun way to meet new people, by the way. So if you see me talking about, hey, I'm going to Breckenridge, because I go for a week, about every 5 to 8 weeks, I go to the mountains for a week easily. And that's part of how I make that affordable. Breckenridge is expensive. Okay. And so for me to make that affordable, I do that. That's not for everyone, which is why I share that they always have single rooms. So if you're like, I'm not about that life, Michelle, I'm a little bougier than that, that's totally fine. Then go into your own room. I'm going to share some links to places
Oh, sorry, I muted you, Michelle. I was trying to mute somebody else.
No worries. I will share links to give you ideas of what the places I'm staying at look like, so that you have context. So you're not like, because Americans get weird when they hear hostels. So I want to share what these places look like and where they are for context. Ladies, go for it, because I'm going to find some.
Okay. I do also want to say that I do a little bit of travel hacking, not a ton, but I have the Marriott Chase card, and my anniversary was just over the weekend, and we stayed in a king suite, nice hotel for $3. So I'm not a huge travel hacker. That one is a card that I signed up for like years ago to get a couple of nights in Hawaii with my grandma, but it's a $95 a year fee. So I decided to keep it because this hotel room would have been like $250 plus, and I got it for $3. So 3 plus 95 is still, a significant savings. Plus
A lot of them have a free night associated with them for the various travel cards. I had just signed up for the IHG card because it has a pretty large sign up bonus going on right now. And it's a hotel chain that I stay at for True Design. I mean, I don't know that you can say one is better than the other. It's more about like what hotels you would stay at, what's in your area, etc. It might be based on a sign up bonus that's going on right now. And by the way, Michelle, I think I saw a Society Hotel. They had one down in downtown Portland, I think, and it had like the 3 or 4 high bunks.
I've stayed at that one. So it has bunks, but I stayed in the single rooms for that one. I was at Lolo Retreat. And so the one in Bingen is their new facility, and I'll be in touch when I'm up there. I'm
Yeah.
very excited.
And I do want to say, for anyone who's interested in the travel hacking stuff, we are going to have a WPF chat about that probably in January. We'll let you know when that's scheduled, but we're going to have one of our WPF insiders who has done like $30,000 of free travel come and talk to everybody about the travel hacking stuff. So we won't get to that today, but just letting you all know that that is upcoming. And then we are just about at the end of our time, because then I have to go get my kiddo. But I don't know, Michelle, do you have any other final thoughts? I feel like we could talk about this forever, but I really like that you're focusing on that, like, a recession doesn't mean that we have to give up all joy for the length of the recession.
No, so people, when you look at the hostels, just when you're looking at the rooms, just see if they have private rooms versus hotels that own. Hostels have shared rooms and private rooms. So just look at whatever hostels and see what they offer. By the way, I saw a comment about the bunks. This is a very good point. So I personally am not a fan of shared sex rooms. I do stay at the bivvy because I go so often. I know everyone. That's a little different. In general, I don't like it. So you can typically choose female only. Okay. So you're not, it's not like you can only do this one thing unless it's the hostel you're picking. But I'm very, like, you've seen the links I've shared, I'm very particular. One of those hostels was actually an Architectural Digest, the one in Colorado. So I'm very particular. You just have to have a list of what your priorities are, and then make sure that when you're looking that it meets your priorities. So for me, I want a kitchen, I want a hot tub, I want a fire pit. Usually, like, those are big because it snows here, so we like to soak in the hot tub outside. I want nature, I want nice people, and I want it to be clean. So I've stayed at all of these places except for the one in Oregon in Bingen, which is where I'm going next, but I've stayed at the Portland location. So these are all places I've been to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I travel not as a single person. I usually travel as at least my family of 3 and often like 1 or 2 extra people. But, you know, we've done they generally have family rooms at hostels. So we've stayed at like in Iceland, they call them guest houses instead of hostels. They're a hostel where, you know, there's like 4 beds in a room and you have your own room, but shared bathroom, sometimes not. But they're generally really nice spaces. And depending on your type of travel, if you're there to like go to fun restaurants and go on hikes and like enjoy like wandering around, you're not spending a ton of time in your room anyway. So at least for me, I would rather save money on the room and still get to go do the thing.
That's exactly why I do what I do, because I'm not in the room. And one lady pointed out that mixed rooms means snoring. Yes, that's the other reason why I'm like, look, you're not my boy, okay? Like, if we're dating, that's one thing, but we're not dating for me to be dealing with your snoring. So yes, that's the other reason why I try to avoid that.
Yeah.
I love it.
So thanks so much for joining us today, Michelle. And again, you can find Michelle at michelleismoneyhungry.com. She has a awesome podcast about this kind of money and life stuff. And anything else you want to plug at this point?
Just listen to the podcast. I love the support with that. And thank you guys for hanging out with us. It's hard because I do want to say this, recessions are scary because it feels like there's a lot that's unknown, but because you are here, there are things that we can control, and then focus on that. Be active in the group. These ladies have done such a like wonderful thing with this community. You're not alone. Basically, you are not alone in your fears, your concerns, your goals. We've got you. They've got you. So yeah. You'll be okay.